Welcome, and nice to see you here, and you've already started your conversations, which is great. You'll be able to keep them going as we go through today. We'll stop occasionally for some conversation. Today we're thinking about dreams and how they matter to us, or may matter to us, and perhaps even influence our faith. Does God communicate through dreams? And we'll be discussing more broadly many ways that God speaks to us, or to put it another way, what or how or when or where do you experience the deepest connection between your mind, your body, and your spirit? Where or how do you listen for God? So big topics. I'm going to start with dreams, but then we'll talk a little bit more broadly about, in general, how we listen for God. Okay. Click it twice. Maybe it'll go. There we go. Okay. And I want to thank Chris. Chris has done a new setup here for us. Don't have the big TV over here. Just have a little monitor and a very nice monitor right here, so we can keep our hands free and kind of follow along. Theoretically, that means it will go smoother. Theoretically, but Rick is smiling because he knows it might not be the case. But anyway,
when I'm in the room, technology never is flawless.
Okay, all right, it's your fault. So we're going to start with Joseph the Dreamer. If you were in worship, you heard Peter preaching on this story of Joseph and the dreams. We heard this first story from Genesis 37 in the children's Bible, which took some liberties actually with the actual text, I thought. But the basic thing was that Joseph, who was the 11th of 12 sons, Jacob, or at the time of Genesis 37, he's still named Israel. He's one of the younger sons, and he has this dream, of course. Well, first of all, his father, his brothers do think that he's kind of privileged because his father gives him this beautiful coat of many colors. But anyway, Joseph has this dream about a bunch of sheaves of grain in the fields that bow down to him. And then he tells his brothers about this dream. I kind of chalk that up to his being youthful and exuberant, but obviously gets him in trouble. But then he has another dream about 11 stars, again, his brothers, sun and the moon, his mother and father, bowing down to him. And even his father gets a little perturbed with him. But I think it's interesting at the end of that episode, it says, so his brothers were jealous of Joseph, but his father kept the matter in mind. What did this mean that he had this dream that they were all bowing to him? In the children's Bible story today, the father's mad, but that's not exactly how it works here. He's a little upset with Joseph. You know, you're probably not being smart telling your brothers these dreams, and you know, we don't want to bow down to you, mother and father, either. So we're not sure about this, but what he's doing is pondering in his mind. And I think that that's actually sort of a little bit of foreshadowing for what happens later in the story, that the father keeps this in mind. So there's a lot of dreams in the book of Genesis. Of course, Joseph is sold into slavery in Egypt, and he ends up serving Potiphar, who is the captain of the guard of Pharaoh. And Potiphar's wife, we'll just say, takes a fancy to him. Is that a kind way of putting it, or a clean way of putting it? And Joseph tries to get away from her clutches, and he loses his clothes and everything in the court. You can imagine the scene. And he gets in trouble, so he gets thrown in jail. Well, a little bit later on, two of Pharaoh's workers, the baker and the cupbearer that serve Pharaoh, do something. They mess up and they get thrown in jail too. And that's where Joseph meets them. They both have dreams in jail, and Joseph happens to be there and interprets for them what the meaning is. And for the baker and for the cupbearer, he tells their dreams. And then later on, those dreams come true. The cupbearer is elevated, as Joseph said he would be, but the baker is strung up and dies, which is what Joseph said would happen also. And then in verse 40, or in chapter 41, Pharaoh has dreams, right? He dreams about some fat cows coming out of the Nile, sleek, fat cows. And then he dreams of 7 scrawny, emaciated cows coming out of the Nile, and then they eat the fat ones. And the same thing happens with grain, as these fat grains and stalks with lots of ears of corn or whatever it is that's on the stalks. And then some blighted stalks emerge and they eat up the good ones. And so Pharaoh doesn't know what to do with these dreams, and somebody tells, I think it's the cupbearer, tells Pharaoh, well, this guy who was in prison with me can tell you what those dreams mean. And so Joseph interprets the dreams. It's about 7 years of drought followed by 7 years of good, and which elevates Joseph into a position of kind of being in charge of all the food capture in Egypt, and you know, he saves the Egyptian people because 7 years of good crops are gathered into granaries and kept, so that when the 7 years of famine come, things are in good shape. Well, the same thing is happening in Canaan, where the brothers and father and mother live. They're having a famine too, and then they end up, he ends up saving not only the Egyptians, but his own family, who come to Egypt to get grain. So there are, I would summarize these stories in of Joseph in this way. Dreams move the story of Joseph from prophecy to fulfillment. Remember, the father was kind of wondering what this all means. Well, the story plays that out. So the brothers come to Joseph at the beginning and bow down to him because he is this Egyptian overlord who is in charge of food. So they bow down to him in the story. Lots of things happen. We don't have time to even think about all the twists and turns. But they eventually have to come back to Joseph at the end of the story, and that's the story that we'll hear about in worship today, or you already heard, where they again bow down to Joseph, asking his forgiveness. And he says, I'm not in the place of God. You meant to harm me, but God meant it for good. So dreams and Joseph move from prophecy to fulfillment. And then one other thing, observation, I think, dreams matter in God's story and our story. And that's what we're going to focus on the most today. How do dreams matter in God's story and our story? There we go. There are lots of dream stories in the Bible. This is just a quick summary. There are 21 stories that are considered dream stories. 6 of the dreamers are kings. 2 of the dreamers are named Joseph. We just talked about one of them. Who's the other one? Joseph, who was engaged to Mary. And In Matthew, in the first episode, an angel comes to him in a dream and tells him, because he was ready to divorce Mary. I mean, they weren't technically married yet, but they used the term divorce to say, kind of set her aside. He wasn't going to go through with the marriage, in other words. But the angel said, no, you should go through with it. She is pregnant by God, and you will be her husband, and you will name him Jesus. He'll be Emmanuel, meaning God with us. There's one other place where Joseph has a dream that's significant. Does anybody remember what that is?
In Egypt.
Yes, Egypt, right. He is told in a dream to go to Egypt to save his family, to save Mary and Jesus, because well, he's warned in a dream, he needs to flee because Herod has decided to kill all of the infant children in Bethlehem or that surrounding area just to make sure that he gets Jesus. And so Joseph is warned to go. Only one woman has a dream in Matthew, or excuse me, in the Bible. I almost gave it away. Anybody know who that dreamer is?
Mary in Luke.
Mary and Luke. It's not a dream. Elizabeth? No. I was gonna say if anybody knows this one, I'm gonna give them their Bible sticker for the day. This is a tricky one, actually.
Well, her or Pontius Pilate's wife.
Ah,
Yeah.
Gary, where's the sticker? Way to go. Gary, you win the sticker.
It just came to me.
I don't have one right now, but maybe Stevie has. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, right on my, yeah, really good. Right on my forehead. Right?
Yes, you're a clever dog.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, 4 years of seminary. We'll get to that. So Pilate's wife, and if you don't even know exactly what you don't even know what the dream is. Here's all it says. While he, that is Pilate, was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, have nothing to do with Jesus, with that innocent man, for today I've suffered a great deal because of a dream about him. It's the only way that you know that she had a dream. You don't know what the dream is exactly. So that's our Bible trivia for today. Yes.
I was thinking maybe there's only one dream in the Bible because they never asked women.
Yeah. Never ask women what they dream. Do women dream?
Oh.
Oh. Wow, that was kind of rugged, isn't it? So we're going to kind of transition into this question about dreams and the link between dreams and faith. I'm going to start with a quote. There are a number of books that try to look at what are the meaning of dreams? What might the dreams mean for faith or understanding, spiritual understanding? I think this book, I'm going to give you one quote from, it's called The Surprising Link Between Dreams and Faith by Kelly Bulkley, but she's also written a book about this, Big Dreams and Science of Dreaming and the Origins of Religion, which I can recommend. I think it's not way out there, you know. She's a theologian, and I think a psychiatrist or counselor in that way. And she combines those things. But here's a quote I just want to read from this article. It's a little bit lengthy, so just listen. It's easy to assume that dreams are nothing but neutral nonsense, a series of random scenes and images with few discernible health benefits that distract us while we sleep. But modern neuroscience tells a different story, namely that dreams can prime us to be spiritual in one form or another. To understand why, it helps to understand what happens to our bodies when we dream. Though we may not be physically conscious during sleep, at times our brains remain extremely active, especially in the networks responsible for visual imagination, emotional memories, and instinctual responses. These are the elements that characterize what psychologist C.G. Jung called big dreams. Intense, memorable experiences such as magical flying, visitations from the dead, nightmares of demonic attack, or lucid dreams of higher consciousness. And such dreams are fairly common. My research with sleep and dream database has found, for instance, that about half of American adults, 51% of women, I guess women do dream, 38% of men say that they've had at least one visitation dream. And well over half, 75% of women, 68% of men say they've had one involving lucid self-awareness. Science may not be able to prove the existence of God or the gods, but she says it can prove that for many people, dreams offer a way to expand their sense of reality and attain a higher level of being, not unlike religion. A question that we're going to look at in our groups is this one on big dreams. To get you started, I'm going to just tell you one of mine, and then we'll let you loose to tell your big dreams in just a minute. During COVID, and I'm not sure if it's because I watched a kind of a disturbing movie or what it was. I'm not sure exactly what was going on. But anyway, this happened during COVID. It was a ways into it. It wasn't right at the beginning. We had been going through COVID. I mean, as a country and as a world. And I had this dream. It still is almost as lucid today, right now, as it was when it happened. It was that remarkable. So I happened to be in this building, and I was in a kind of a, I'd say it was a concert hall. It was fully dark, completely dark. I was in this concert hall, and all I could feel around me was the presence of something evil, something that wanted to get me. You know, you maybe had dreams like that. And I heard a voice saying, head for the back door, head toward the beginning, at the front of the building or something like that. It was just like, I didn't know where the doors were or anything. I just started feeling my way in the dark, and I found a door and I went out. And I went through this corridor. It was like school cafeteria or something. There were all kinds of people around. It was obviously something was going on. It was very erratic, and people were angry with each other. It just had that feeling of, oh, this is danger. So I kept going, and I got to the front of the building, and there was the ticket counter for coming into the building, I suppose, if you're going to a concert. And I was told to go into the ticket booth. And there were 3 people sitting at the ticket booth in these chairs by windows where you'd be taking tickets. And there was one supervisor behind saying, well, there's your chair. So I was the 4th ticket taker. I sat down, and again, things were very chaotic, and I was worried that things were going to blow up. The people in the building were going to kill each other or whatever. It was terrible. And suddenly, the 3 people sitting in the chairs started singing in a in 4-part harmony and or 3-part harmony, and I was the 4th one. And the supervisor said, "Yeah, sing." Go." So I was supposed to sing with them. So we were singing this music that was, I can't. It's hard for me to describe. It was just otherworldly, beautiful. And suddenly people started walking out of the building holding hands and being, there was a great sense of calmness, like things were going to be okay. And that's when I woke up. When I woke up, the first thing I did was grab a piece of paper, and 2 words came to my mind. Hold on. Hold on. That's, I don't know why, but that's what they were. So I ended up writing the song, Hold On, based on that. So that's, for me, is a big dream, which led to some actual concrete action. So we're going to ask you, have you ever experienced a big dream, a lucid dream that led to some inspiration, affected a decision, made you feel closer to God? So in your groups, take some time to share that if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to share a lucid dream, we'll take a few minutes for that, and then Susan will get us back to looking at some other questions about dreaming.
Does it have to be lucid?
No. It should be one that you remember and that you don't make up. I think that's what lucid means.
Well, have you had a good dream lately? Or
But most of them are entertainment. They're not entertainment. And, you know, like having fun, you know, playing with grandchildren or, you know, that sort of thing. So when she talks about a dream that I know that I have. Remember one of the, and I'm thinking, it's like 40. You know, when I was trying to make that and things like that. Some reason it really connected to my life and the decisions that I was making. And I remember those decisions that were there. I was thinking about it. But in
And so.
But usually, like they say, you're trying to solve a problem, or got something going on that they can't figure out what you do about it, or why it is the way it is, whatever. And I always do that. They do help me during the course of the dream, whatever it is I'm doing, and it helps solve the issue.
So you say feeling
I
like
wake
having
up like, oh, I've got to. It's like if you're having an issue, go for a walk. Walking, I think, almost has the same effect. As you're walking. Big dreams.
Dreams about.
Well, you have dreams about me.
You don't get.
I have a lot of, I dream a lot. I mean, I have weird stories like I'm trying to. I used to travel all the time.
Sounds like work.
And it's like work, but it's part of my job. I would really have a dream about not having something that I needed when I was or not, or having difficulty getting to the airport, or whatever. And here's the funny thing, almost all of those dreams ended in me realizing I needed to get because I was always hurrying to do something, and I'm not getting there, I'm not gonna make it or whatever. Those are kind of big dreams.
Well, interesting. I remember what. But interesting. Before we looked up and saw what we were doing, Paul said to me, I live for reason. And I yes, that's exactly what it was. What do you think it meant? And so I listened and it was, I'm trying to solve something, you know, and maybe it's God saying, and why don't you tell me, remember it enough? Okay.
Just there when your mother. See my dad.
Not really.
There you go. That's so strange. We're gonna be comfortable. You remember a good guy. He was driving.
So this was more like 10 minutes.
Remember.
Big screeching and brakes.
So you interpreted that dream for him?
Yeah, I did, but I've been thinking about it a lot. So I have some possible interpretation.
The issue that I have is waking up, so trying to figure out where I am. Because to our 60 years together, we have moved. So I think that's part of my. Where am I going?
Yeah, we never lived anywhere more. As you move, if we had been there for almost 4 years, sure enough, we did move jobs. So we moved a lot. And it's not a lot of people. They call them. That we go to Texas. Like that. But I don't see always worried about it. Where am I? So the car was.
God made me really.
Yeah.
Right, it's very recent.
You don't have to pay my. Yeah.
Focus on.
Yeah. you-
No.
That is that we live in. Is bodies. You know, thinking about.
When I was.
Take a couple more minutes. I know that thanks for sharing of your dreams. Then we'll.
And we grew up on a farm, we didn't have running water. And so, my mom would always cut a.
Very. So you got there.
Bathtub that over it, she would always set it on for us when we, Saturday night, she'd take a bath. She would set it on the kitchen table, and then she would fill it with hot water. And one morning, or one night, Saturday night, both my sister and I are in the tub, so my mom was, I have no idea what my dad. Got so damp that the ceiling actually came down on us while we were taking. It just crumbled. But it was quite an experience because all of a sudden it was coming down all over the place. It just broke into pieces and fell down all over.
So that was a dream.
That wasn't a dream, that was real, but you know, like you were experiencing my dream or something. My reality, you were having a dream about my reality. So, I don't know if that could work across people that you've never met at that point.
Used to have a canopy over here. They used to have, and that was because of the attached roof. That's and stuff, not stuff down, so that's the drives of that, canopy bed.
Yeah. One of my very earliest, and I'm not sure today that I really remember it. I was talking about it. I was probably 20 years old at the most.
You told that story off around to last.
I have told that story. And I assume that my mother has probably told me about it. So that's why I still feel
Yes, unless you get to write down. And I did stuff I got. I was trying to do that. Trying to write down my dreams when I woke up. That was serious. But I have.
Okay, are we about done? I was telling Scott that, you know, this theme that we have this fall in church about telling our stories, this is kind of the perfect topic because most of us have stories about our dreams. And, you know, some dreams, I mean, I'm not an expert. I mean, it's such a big topic. I mean, there's so much written and there's all these books written about exactly what different things in your dreams mean something. Like if you dream about a house, they feel like it's your body, you know. If you dream about, my late husband used to think that when we have different people in our dreams or different events, they're not really what they are, that most of them are about different parts of us. So anyway, so, you know, a lot of different thoughts about dreams. Just a couple of my repeating dreams, and repeating dreams are an interesting thought too. It's like something is trying to get through to us. But when I was young, growing up in pretty chaotic family, alcoholic dad, a lot going on. I was the oldest of 4. And I had this dream I was driving this car. I didn't know how to drive. I was about 8. And I had all the kids in the car. And I was just going around these corners and turning and everything like that. And we always made it, but it was like, you know, total heart pounding and all that kind of stuff. And obviously that meant I was probably over my head, you know, but I felt like I needed to do it. And then I also had dreams of flying. I don't know how many other people have dreamt of flying. Wow. Well,
It's pretty neat.
it is. And according to this research, that is pretty common too, that those dreams of flying. But I can still feel, there's still a part of my brain that thinks I really can fly. I mean, that's how strong it is. You know?
You ever had that dream?
And then also, how many people have had those dreams about visitation from someone who's passed? So that's a pretty big one too. And again, all dreams maybe are not spiritual or are not God telling us that about something. I mean, some dreams maybe are that you had chili for dinner. And you wake up and you're very upset in your dream, you know, there's all of that kind of thing too. But Jung talks about befriending our dreams. And he feels like we come to maturity by integrating not only the light in our lives, but also the dark sides of our story. And it is so easy in our conscious life, a lot of times, to run away from those, to deny, to suppress it. I mean, that's kind of just what we do with pain, you know, a lot of times. But he says that, especially when he talks about integrating the conscious and the unconscious in our life, that, you know, can be very well God's way of showing us that it's time to work on certain things. I told Scott, I just remembered too, I've had this recurring dream of having a baby that is lost. And that I wake up and I just, you know, I look under the cribs, I look everywhere and I cannot find this baby, or else that it's a sick baby. And I finally realized that for me, when I wasn't taking care of myself or, you know, too extended in that's what that dream meant. So it kind of helped bring me back to paying attention to that part. Henry Nouwen also says that Jung helped him understand that sometimes one problem with Christianity is that it doesn't feel like it transforms people anymore. And so that's why he was a proponent of this inner experience to help anchor individuals to God, which is a lot of what the mystics used to do. And dreaming and going into our dreams is one way to do that. He also talks about, Richard Rohr actually talks about dream journals. And that is one way that he talks about that trying to remember what you, and to see if, you know, if there's a repeating pattern or something like that. There's a lot of people I know that they sell these pens that light up. And if you put a pad of paper by your bed with this light up pen, and if you have a dream, as soon as you open your eyes, it starts going away. So there's some people who, with this pen, just all of a sudden write down a few words of what that dream is about. And that's kind of one way to work with a dream journal, to see if maybe there's a pattern of what God is trying to say. We can talk more about this later, but certainly, you know, what Jung is talking about, the dark sides of our stories, maybe those come out in nightmares. Maybe those come out in dreams that we can't understand, or parts of it when we wake up and we're so maybe upset or fearful or something. So trying to stick with that a little bit is an important piece. So one other interesting kind of a thing, I don't know how many of you know what EMDR is in therapy. It's called eye movement desensitization. It's people who have hard stuff that's happened or trauma, and they go into a therapist, and the therapist does something with this bilateral eye movement. You can also do it with tapping, anything bilateral, or even they have these clickers. But the point of it is that when we're in REM sleep, that is exactly what's happening, is that our eyes are going back and forth. And that's what they say, neurologists are saying a lot of times, how we are processing our experience, how we're working through kinds of things. And when trauma or hard things or losses almost like get stuck in our brain, people do different things, but going to a therapist who does EMDR, the research is amazing, how it helps people to process through hard issues that are kind of stuck in there. So, and again, like I say, there's also even like a tapping kind of a thing that works in the same ways. There's a lot of good tapping books too. If you're interested, let me know. I've got, you know, a couple names of some good books about that. So the question is then, as far as discussion. Okay. Do you see a pattern in your dreams ever? What about nightmares? Have you had disturbing dreams that you don't know what to do with? And how possibly have you felt, or maybe want to feel, that God is working through you on certain issues in your dreams? So let's talk for a little bit about that. Take anyone you want. Take any question you want out of those. Do you see a pattern in your dreams? Repeating dreams?
I went through some traumatic times in my life, and I kind of think I have PTSD from that. And I have dreams that throw me back in there, and I don't want to be there, so I wake up, and then as soon as I shut my eyes, I'm right back in there. Is that, anybody else have experienced anything like that? It's like, even when I'm awake, I'm not really awake. I close my eyes and I'm right back there.
So have you ever written them down?
I have, I don't remember them now. I mean, I've got them at home, but.
Yeah. How about everybody talk about these issues in their groups a little bit?
What's that?
You remember being up in the morning, I'm dreaming
Sometimes.
I usually do when I first, I'm still in bed and I'm not moving and maybe my eyes are. Then I kind of remember a little of it. And as I said before, if I write it down or tell somebody right away, but I'm waiting for it by a few hours, so that's.
Get some solid paper glass.
Yeah.
Think you dream at all?
I really don't.
You must be dreaming something. It's you're moving around a lot.
And.
There you go.
Like coffee.
No.
Sometimes this guy is not intelligent, not where I can understand what he is saying. But speaking times, yes.
Right.
But they are intelligible words or phrases or occasions. Never anything that I had to discuss with
I don't, do I talk with my sleep? No. I'm restless sometimes. I know that. I think it's like I can't get my head here. It's been an hour. I've had it 3 o'clock in the morning. Really high up. And I'm thinking, get back to sleep. Just lay there. You know. An hour or two later, so I've obviously slept, but.
I know I have sometimes woken up with something coming out of my voice box, like, or, something like that. Or even what I clearly remember waking up singing a song.
The other side of.
And as I recall, it was a great song, I mean, so I associated it with, well, we had done this one song in choir. But anyways, it was a very.
Well, we just came back from, I had the Navy.
Oh, yeah.
I was in like water.
Yeah.
Station with the island. So we sat around for 3 or 4 days.
Telling war stories.
I'm in there telling war stories. I do recall. Last night, some of those stories or some of those activities came back in my Christmas. I dreamt about this.
So you did that after.
While we were there, but those sitting around telling those stories brought them back to life a little bit. And then that night, probably, I dreamt about a couple of them last night.
So you. Or not.
Yeah, but it's something that happened so long ago. But all of a sudden, it's fresh in your mind. Somebody, because we'd be sitting around a bunch of guys. We talk about that. I have forgotten. It would come back to me more the detail. But they were 22, 23 years old.
Sorry, I forget but when you say that, if it's bad. I know what I would do. And that is, I don't want to remember the dream because it makes me want to back. That's the way I would interpret it.
I'm gonna have to be more conscious.
Oh, pure substance.
Yeah. Trying to bring it into medium conscious instead of some conscious. Yeah, I would guess that I almost always wake up in the morning from it. It almost always the same way.
Yeah.
But just like to be more
She's not a good sleeper, so that might be.
Could I just throw out a question a little bit? Does anyone have any thoughts about their own, about how they have kept track of their dreams? Jean?
I did journaling of dreams, a while, some years ago. I'm not doing it now, but that's where it was really intriguing to go back and read. And then when I reread over, a time period, I could see patterns. I could
Okay.
see things that I was dealing with, either it was some situation I had been in but that helped me. I could see patterns.
So in her journaling, she could see patterns. Anybody else? How about some of the other questions, like, for example, disturbing things or dreams where you felt like you were kind of being led in a direction to look at a certain part of your life? If you feel like sharing.
We did talk a little bit about that in our group.
Right, right.
Did you want to share anything?
Susan, could I ask a question? I brought it up here too. Dreams from times you're sleeping as opposed to visions. We hear the word vision used a lot in the Bible too. Came in a vision. Is that a dream or is it? I don't know, difference. It's just throwing out a question that I thought of.
I suppose it might be a dream.
I think I think the Bible makes a distinction between the two, but it certainly seems to me that dreaming and having a vision, where you could be lucid, could be awake and have a vision of something. I think that happens to all of us.
Can you?
Suddenly you have kind of an epiphany. Oh, I'd say that's more of a vision. It's not an unconscious dream that we happen to remember. So I think there's a distinction between the
Well,
two.
and I think too, that if you're doing something repetitive, like trying to get some exercise on an exercise bike or something like that,
Yeah.
don't you sometimes, even though you're wide awake, your mind kind of loosens up? And it's not, and it does feel almost like you're daydreaming.
Or going for a
Yeah.
walk or a
Yeah.
run or
Right.
something, that can
That's a
happen.
good reference to daydreaming too, that.
Yeah.
Here.
Jane is encouraging me to talk about an episode in my life, I don't know how many
We
years
take
ago
that
now.
off just a minute.
Oh,
Do you want to use a microphone then?
No, sure.
maybe not. No.
We'll all hear it then.
Yeah, I know. No, I was, my aunt she was 90 years old, 91 at the time. She was in hospice over at the Pillars, if you know where that is, off McKnight, and anyway. And she was there for 3 weeks before she died, and Gina and I, or one of us would go over there every day, be with her, and my uncle who was 96 or 95 at the time, still living. And anyway, so one day I'm there with Eleanor, my aunt. And Gina was in the room. And I just said, I'm gonna go out and get a cup of coffee. Well, you want some coffee, Gina? And so But I walked out of the room, went to get the coffee down the hallway, and I turned to come back with a cup of coffee in my hand, and at the end of the hallway, I saw this figure with a white robe. So I assumed it was a nurse. It was like nurse's garb, walking into my aunt's room, the end of the hallway. So I thought, oh, they're giving her some treatment. So I walked down the hallway and into the room, and there was nobody else there but Jean and my aunt. And I said to Jean, wasn't a nurse in here? And she said, no. And I went, this is strange. And I sat down by my aunt's bed and I looked at her and I said to Jean, I don't think she's breathing. And I ran out of the room and got a nurse who came in right away, and she said, no, she died. She's dead. She isn't living. I went, whoa. Now, what was that? What was that figure going into the room? That was my.
But she spoke to you after you came into the room.
Who spoke to me?
Your aunt?
She did not.
Oh, I thought.
No, she did not speak to me.
Oh, you asked Jean whether somebody.
Yes, but it was strange.
Yeah.
A vision,
Yeah.
not a dream, but a vision.
But it was peaceful for you.
Yeah, it was.
Well, we're at the end of our time. I'm just going to show you the slide that we didn't get to talk about. This may be a whole other adult forum. How do you listen for God? There are many ways that we listen for God. Just some of the ideas up here, and we're going to take some time for that as well. But I think there is a connection between our dreams and all the other ways that we listen for God. And hopefully you got some ideas today about how to maybe capture dreams and think about the meaning and what that might mean for your living as well. So, thanks.
Thank you.